I love my husband. That statement used to be a given, something I never had to think about. Loving him was like breathing, like a heartbeat, natural, simple, and steady. But over time, I began to realize that love isn't always as steady as we believe. It needs to be nurtured. It needs to be maintained. And most importantly, it takes two people to work together. 4 days ago, Ethan left for work. 7 days apart. Too long for me. Too long for the kids. He often travels for work, and I'm always home taking care of our 2 children, keeping this family together. I don't blame him. I know he works hard for us. But this time, for some reason, his absence left me feeling emptier than ever. This morning, as I sat down for breakfast with the kids, I felt an invisible void between the 3 of us. Sophia, my 6-year-old daughter, was absent-mindedly stirring her spoon in her cereal, not bothering to eat. Liam, my 13-year-old son, was glued to his phone, completely oblivious to his surroundings. "Eat up, sweetheart. Your cereal is getting soft," I gently reminded her. She pursed her lips. "I'm not hungry." I hesitated. Mornings used to be filled with laughter. Ethan would pretend to steal Sophia's bread, making her squeal with delight. Liam would try to act all grown up, but he would still laugh when his dad teased him. But when Ethan left on business trips, everything became so quiet. I blurted out, "How about we fly to see Dad?" Sophia immediately lifted her head, her round eyes shining brightly. "Really, Mom?" Liam didn't look up from his phone, but I saw the corners of his lips curl up slightly. He was growing up, no longer easily excited by surprise trips. But that reaction alone was a good sign for me. "Yes. We'll book the tickets today and be there by tonight." I smiled, already planning everything in my head. Sophia almost jumped up, clapping her little hands in excitement. "Daddy's going to be so surprised." Liam finally glanced at me. "Good idea, Mom." For a teenage boy, that was the equivalent of a squeal of excitement. I smiled. Warmth filled my heart. When was the last time our family truly enjoyed time together? I couldn't remember. Everything happened so fast. Within hours we packed our bags, booked our tickets, flew, and arrived. I was filled with anticipation, partly because I wanted to see Ethan's surprised face, partly because I believed our family would have a happy time together, just like before. Before leaving for the airport, I sent my husband a text. "Hey, how was your day? How's work?" No reply. I didn't mind. Ethan was a busy man. Sometimes he didn't respond right away. I put my phone down and smiled at the kids. "Ready. Ready." Sophia cheered. Liam grabbed his suitcase and pulled it toward the door. I took a deep breath. Tonight we were going to have a great time together. I was sure of it. The flight was 3 hours long, but it felt like a blink of an eye. Sophia sat beside me, watching cartoons and fiddling with her seatbelt. Liam had his headphones on, lost in his own world. I looked out the window. The city lights slowly came into view beneath us. Chicago, the bustling city where my husband was staying. That's when I realized something strange. Ethan still hadn't replied to my text. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. A strange feeling crept into my stomach, but I quickly brushed it off. He must be busy. Maybe he was in a meeting. I sent another text. "Honey, the kids and I miss you. Call me when you're free." Still no response. A small worry started to form in my mind, but I didn't want it to affect the kids' excitement. I smiled brightly and turned to Sophia. "We're almost there, sweetheart." She cheered, while Liam pulled down his headphones and looked out the window. I took a deep breath. Everything will be fine. When we arrived at the airport, I could feel the energy of the city. The flashing neon signs. The hurried crowds. The sound of car horns echoing through the streets. I rented a car and entered Ethan's hotel address into the GPS. As the car moved forward, my heart grew heavier. Why hadn't he answered me yet? With just 5 minutes left before arriving, I tried calling Ethan. The phone rang. No answer. I tried again. This time the call went straight to voicemail. A feeling of unease began to settle in. From the rearview mirror, I saw Liam watching me. Dad still hasn't answered? I shook my head, trying to keep my voice calm. Maybe he's sleeping. I wanted to believe that. But when we arrived at the hotel, I knew I was wrong. I held Sophia's hand tightly as we walked into the hotel lobby. trying to contain the rising unease within me. The receptionist stood behind the counter, smiling politely. I returned the smile, keeping my voice steady. "Hello, I'm Ethan Walker's wife. My husband is staying here. I want to surprise him. Could you tell me his room number?" The receptionist, a young woman with sharp eyes, glanced at her computer screen. I noticed her hesitation, a very small reaction, but enough for me to sense something was off. "I'm sorry, but we can't provide room numbers for security reasons." I nodded. I had expected that. "Then could you call his room for me? I just want to let him know his wife and kids are here." She hesitated for a second, then picked up the phone and dialed. I held my breath. 1 ring. 2 rings. No answer. The receptionist put the phone down and looked at me with sympathy. "Your husband isn't answering." My heart sank. I forced a smile, but the unease inside me tightened its grip. "It's okay. He's probably just sleeping." "But I see my husband booked a double room, right?" The receptionist looked confused, her eyes flickering with hesitation. I felt my heart stop. "What did you say?" I asked again, my voice catching in my throat. She glanced at the screen again, biting her lip. "I'm sorry, but your husband's room was booked for 2 people." It felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared. A chill ran down my spine, numbing my ears. "Another person?" I repeated, as if I couldn't believe my own words. "What do you mean?" The receptionist blinked, probably realizing she had misspoken. "Sorry, I can't disclose any further information." But I didn't need her to say anything more. I understood. I forced a hollow smile. "No problem. Thank you. Can you book me a room on the same floor?" The receptionist hesitated but nodded. "Let me check. You're in luck. We do have another room on the same floor." I paid and took the room key. When I turned around, I saw Liam watching me. His eyes were filled with suspicion. "Mom, is something wrong?" I took a deep breath, looking down at Sophia, who had fallen asleep in my arms. "Nothing," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay. But I didn't believe my own words. When I entered the hotel room, I gently placed Sophia on the bed, pulling the covers over her. Liam sat on the edge of the bed, staring at me. "Mom, don't tell me you think this is strange too." I bit my lip. Maybe Dad just didn't answer his phone because he was busy. Liam scoffed. "Really, Mom?" His voice was laced with frustration. "Dad didn't text back. Dad didn't pick up. And now there's a +1 in his room. Doesn't that sound strange to you?" I closed my eyes, trying to fight back the tears threatening to fall. "I know." My voice was so soft I could barely hear it myself. "So what do we do now?" Liam's voice was calm, but I could see the anger boiling in his eyes. I opened my eyes, my hands clenching into fists. "I'm going to check." Liam looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Be careful." I stood in front of room 814, Ethan's room. My hands were shaking. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. I stared at the door, my heart pounding so violently I could hear it in my ears. I had been trying to push this feeling away for hours, but now it was right in front of me, impossible to deny. My hands were trembling as I reached into my pocket, pulling out my hotel key card. I barely had any thoughts left in my mind. I slid the card into the lock. Beep. The green light blinked. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and then I saw it. The room was dimly lit by a bedside lamp, but it was enough. Enough to see 2 figures on the bed. The sheets were a mess. Clothes were scattered across the floor. My husband lay there, his arms wrapped around another woman. I couldn't breathe. Ethan turned his head at the sound of the door opening. His eyes widened in surprise, then quickly shifted to annoyance. Not guilt, not regret, but irritation. I stood frozen, my head spinning, my ears ringing. This couldn't be real. We had 2 kids, a family, a life I had spent years building. And this was how he treated it all? The woman beside him gasped, quickly pulling the sheets over herself, her eyes filled with panic. But Ethan? Ethan simply sighed, rubbing his face as if I had just interrupted a good night's sleep. "Why are you here?" His voice was hollow, emotionless. I laughed, a bitter, disbelieving laugh. "Why?" I looked at him, my chest tightening. Are you really asking me that? Ethan sat up, running a hand through his hair. I can explain. I laughed harder. But this time tears welled up in my eyes and I couldn't stop them. No need. My voice was light. Almost lost. Something inside me shattered. But instead of completely falling apart, I realized something. I didn't need his explanation. Because nothing could change this fact. Ethan looked at me. And for a moment, there was a flicker of surprise in his eyes. But what hurt the most was what came after. His expression shifted. To annoyance. Not shame. Not regret. Not even panic at being caught. Just irritation, as if I was the one at fault. As if I was the one who shouldn't be here. My throat was dry. The room felt smaller. The air, heavier. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my voice from shaking. Why are you here? Those were the first words my husband said to me. Not I'm sorry. Not I can explain. Just a question. I laughed again, a hollow broken laugh. Did you just ask me that? I searched his face. Hoping to see even a glimmer of guilt. But there was none. Just frustration at being disturbed. The woman beside him pulled the blanket up higher, shielding herself, her face filled with fear. But she said nothing. She just watched me, exhausted, silent. Ethan sighed, rubbing his forehead. This isn't what you think. The oldest excuse in the book. The classic line cheaters use when they get caught. I swallowed hard. It felt like I had been punched in the gut. So tell me then, Ethan. My voice was low. Dangerous. What is it? Are you telling me you were just napping under the same blanket? Ethan didn't answer right away. I saw his jaw tighten as if he were considering his next words. Then he exhaled and shrugged. Okay, yeah. She and I had sex. But you're overreacting, Emily. This time I didn't laugh. I just looked at him, trying to comprehend the man standing before me. My husband. The man I had spent over a decade with. The father of my children. And now, an unapologetically unfaithful man.
I'm overreacting.
I repeated his words as if I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan crossed his arms, clicking his tongue in annoyance. Emily, you know how we are. You're too busy with the kids. I'm too busy with work. At some point, everything between us just becomes a duty. Don't you see that? My chest felt like it was being crushed. I stared at him, my mind spinning. What do you mean? My voice cracked. Ethan sighed, as if he were explaining something obvious. I mean, it's nothing serious. It's just something to make me feel alive. I felt my strength drain from my legs. I gripped the edge of the dresser just to stay upright. Alive. I whispered. Ethan, what about me? What about your kids? Did you think about them? He avoided my eyes. Said nothing. My anger started boiling. I took a step forward, forcing him to look at me. Sophia couldn't sit still on the plane because she was so excited to see you, I said, my voice trembling. She wanted to surprise you. Liam. He actually put his phone down for once because he wanted to see his dad. I took a shaky breath. And this is what you're doing? Ethan rolled his eyes, shaking his head. Emily, you don't understand. This isn't. What? I cut him off, my voice rising. Not cheating. He shut his eyes as if frustrated. I'm not leaving my family, he said. I still love you, Emily. But you have to understand, I need something else. I need to feel wanted. Something inside me snapped. You need to feel wanted? My voice was barely above a whisper. But it carried the weight of every ounce of pain I felt. And to do that, you betrayed me? You betrayed your children. Ethan exhaled, but this time it was fake exhaustion. Like I was the one making this difficult for him. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to hurt me? I whispered, my eyes burning. But I refused to cry in front of him. You slept with someone else behind my back while I was home, taking care of the kids. And now you look at me like I'm bothering you. And you dare tell me you didn't mean to hurt me? Ethan sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. Emily, you're being too emotional. You need to calm down. We can talk about this when you're not so. I laughed. A hollow, tired laugh.
No, Ethan.
I shook my head. You're wrong. I took a step back, looking around the hotel room. This place that was supposed to be a reunion. I had expected a hug.
A wormkis.
a moment of happiness. What I got instead was lies, selfishness, betrayal. I turned and walked away, my steps heavy with years of love wasted. Emily, where are you going? His voice rang out behind me. There was no regret in it, just confusion, and maybe annoyance. I paused at the door, my hand on the cold doorknob. I took a deep breath, turned my head, my eyes meeting his. The man I had trusted more than myself. I'm leaving, Ethan. I'm getting my life back. I didn't wait for another excuse. I opened the door and walked out, leaving not only him behind, but also the lies, the betrayal, and a marriage that was beyond saving. The elevator doors closed behind me, sealing away everything I had just left behind. A marriage full of lies, a man I had trusted, past I could never return to. My heart was pounding in my chest, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was a pulse of awakening. When I opened the door to my hotel room, Liam looked up from his phone, his eyes searching. He didn't say anything, just waited for the answer he already knew. Sophia was still asleep on the bed, arms wrapped tightly around her teddy bear, her face peaceful, unaware that her world had just changed forever. I closed the door softly, then walked toward Liam. He didn't need me to say anything, but I knew I had to. We're going home. My voice was soft, like a breeze. Liam looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. No questions, no explanations needed. He understood. I sat on the bed stroking Sophia's soft hair. I knew that when she woke up, she would have 1,000 questions. Where's Daddy? Why didn't we see Daddy? Is he coming home too? But the most important question would be, Mommy, what happened? And I wasn't ready to answer. Liam sat down beside me, his voice quieter than usual. Are you okay? I turned to look at my son. I remembered when he was a toddler, holding my hand whenever he was scared. I remembered when he had a high fever, and I sat beside his bed, whispering in his ear, Mommy's here. Mommy won't let anything bad happen to you. But today our roles were reversed. Liam was the one asking me that question. I smiled even though my heart ached. I'll be okay. Promised. And this time I wasn't just talking to my son. I was talking to myself. I booked the earliest flight. That same night. I couldn't bear to stay in that place a minute longer. When I pulled my suitcase out of the room, Sophia was still fast asleep, her head resting on my shoulder. Liam walked beside me, hands in his pockets, silent. We got into a taxi. As it pulled away from the hotel, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Ethan didn't call. He didn't text. He didn't try to stop me. And he didn't need to. I knew better. As the plane took off, I looked out the window. The city lights below grew smaller and smaller. Liam sat beside me, headphones on, but not really listening. Sophia was still asleep, breathing evenly against my shoulder. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt lighter, because I still had myself. I still had my children, and we would be okay. We would be more than okay, because now I knew one thing for sure. I deserved better, and I would never let anyone take that away from me again.